25th of February 2020. Who would have thought? It's like 5 weeks of doing this story. Who would have thought we'd still be at this now? Welcome, everyone. How far does a sneeze travel? According to the CDC and the World Health Organization, about 6 feet. According to universities, it's around 200 feet. Let's turn that down. This is a 2-day update. My apologies if that was a little bit loud. I like it loud. Most people don't. Hi all, welcome. Let's keep rolling here. Always takes me a couple minutes to get up to cruising speed. So 200 feet for a sneeze means it's aerosol, right? Just a sneeze. And somehow they say the virus is so big it only goes 6 feet. Then it falls down, shakes the earth or something. And just to get you up to speed before we start the show, these are older headlines, but these are important. 1 in 19 people being diagnosed because there's such a latency in incubation. 24 days to 28 days. So you need to, I know a lot of people hate me for saying this, but you need to quarantine for 4 weeks. Coronavirus is 20 times more likely than SARS to bind to human cells. None of these are all studies, none of these have been disproved since. The trolls, World Health Organization. Now, that headline is an older headline. That's an important headline for a couple of stories coming up about the stock market. And survive in 9 days instead of 5. But there's a couple of stories out there, like a golf course. 2 weeks after somebody with the virus was there, they closed it. 2 weeks later, not 9 days. And there's another story today similar to that we'll get to. And most of our drugs are from America. And then, if the weaponized virus, this is a weaponized virus, only travels 6 feet, according to the World Health Organization, and only lasts 30 minutes to 3 hours on surfaces, why are they doing that? Huh? Why? Let's get into it anyway. We're going to have to do a recap on all these headlines. I know I say that, but there's so much news coming out, we don't get a chance to, right? Today was, last 2 days was $1 trillion pulled out of the stock market. And not so funny. Woman says patients are being cremated alive. Not just one, but lots of them. And so you can appreciate that if you're being realistic, that they're lying to you and there's a lot more people dying. You become so desensitized, you just can't deal. We become dysfunctional, and you have to deal with all these dead bodies. So when I set my live stream, normally I just get that one. And this is censorship. This is shadow banning me, the second one. Right, I have 6 gag orders from the Canadian government who dragged me to court 15 times because of nuclear. I'm a nuclear expert. And so the idea given me was the gag orders was so they can monitor me, right? And so you need to share me because I'm being censored heavily. That's outrageous, by the way. So Korea reports, now the first bunch of headlines are from yesterday. And this story, how dynamite this story is, everything is changing within a 24-hour period dramatically. We've never seen an event like this on our planet where if one person allegedly has the flu, they'll quarantine a country. And all kinds of countries will seal borders, etc., etc. But this is a weaponized, I don't think calling it a virus does it justice. This is a bioweapon. And you'll appreciate that if you're new to the subject by the time we get through the end of this presentation. South Korea reported 161 new cases. But South Korea, when they had, I'm not laughing, I'm trying not to scream. South Korea, when they had about 70, we'll call them victims, they had quarantined 2.5 million people in their homes. Oh, and if you leave your home, it's a big fine and you could be arrested. And then China has 760 million locked down. These are not something there's no precedence for that in our history. So 161 new cases. So within just a couple of days, South Korea went from no cases to 1,000 cases and millions under lock, and many countries turning their back on them. It's extraordinary. And then they're insisting this is just an influenza or flu. At the same time, they're locking hundreds of millions of people up. So it's outrageous. We didn't create governments to lie to us and endanger our planet like this. KCDC also reported the 7th death from the virus. This is yesterday's headline from South Korea. And we got just so many headlines to get through. Shocking, really. Next 10 days are crucial for containment of coronavirus spread, says South Korea. Next 10 days. So there goes the fantasy. They're only going to be locking up 2.5 million people for a couple of days. Now it's 10 days, then what? Then it's like China where it never stops? Well, apparently, right? Because the numbers are growing, so you know it's not going to stop, right? Let's be realistic. South Korea said it would be capable of acquiring 10,000 beds. So they're not expecting it to slow down, are they? Nationwide, not just in Daegu, right? Seoul will also designate 43 hospitals. Seoul, the capital. But they're not expecting this to go away. 43 hospitals throughout the entire country. And for 2 weeks, not 10 days, not only that, you get a fine if you go outdoors. We got lots of little headlines back and forth on countries. South Korea are panic buying, so they limb the shelves in their supermarkets, which is what we've seen in Hong Kong, in Beijing, also Italy. We got a story coming up. The same thing is happening now in Italy, where they just go out, whoever got the money, because that's how this works. If like most people live in check to check, in a week's time, a lot of people won't be able to go out and buy more food, and so they can't pay their rent, their heat bills, their light bills, their cables, their phones, blah 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 blah, their mortgages, and so they invested all their money in food. And we're not seeing any videos coming out of China from the victims. We're not seeing any video coming out of South Korea from the victims. We're not seeing from the lockdown. We're not seeing any videos coming out of Italy from everybody locked down. That's not an accident, right? And you see big lines in South Korea, and everything is already locked down. Italian town, there's 12 of them that we know about, have woken to quarantines. Good morning. Now stay in your house and shut up. We're the government. We're the people you hired not to do this. Queries for food and coronavirus outbreak. Everything is locked down. All the sports is turned off. Tens of thousands of Italians prepared for a week-long quarantine. You're making a big mistake if you're only preparing for a week. You need hundreds of pounds of basic foods and stored because this is coming to your neighborhood. On Sundays, nerves begin to fray among the locals faced. So if you wait, right, for tell the government, the people you hired not to do stuff like this, to finally admit that you got a problem, you're going to be stuck with just little or no food. You can't take the chance, eh? Among the locals faced with new lockdown measures, it's inhuman. Fighting over 4 sandwiches is disgusting. Right? Because there was nothing left in the supermarket. There was 4 sandwiches and people were fighting over it. Like Hollywood did make any horror movies. Like this is a horror movie in real life, playing out before our eyes, but behind censorship. We're preparing to set up checkpoints for the containment zone. They actually now, this was yesterday's stuff. Today we see they got the military circled the entire communities. No one goes in, no one comes out. If you leave your house, you get a big fine. Whereas China, you leave the house, they beat you half to death and just throw you into police vehicles and they disappear you. What China's doing is horrifying. So it's not a big stretch to imagine they're burning people alive. And we'll get to that story coming up, and saying that initially the perimeter would be narrow but could widen. We're about 10 criminal police teams there, so nothing related to this kind of situation ever seen in Italy or anywhere else before. The government said those found in violations faces fines and 3 months in jail. Israel has given people 7 years in jail if they break the quarantine. And Italy's government has also said the army was prepared to step in, which is what it done, right, this morning. And then I'll put that on the big screen. This is Italy. They also just took all the food. It's all gone. Everything's gone. People walking through with their cameras. Not the super high quality, but just some verification for people, because it's important. They're showing everything in their local supermarkets. They're gone. And now we know from the reports that's true in that whole area. Not all the food, but the majority of the food is gone. So that's the worst case scenario is right there. You're looking at it. That's the worst case scenario. Which means everybody that's got limited budgets, aka the majority of the population, is going to have to do without. And how you only can do for 3 days without food. And then how long before the infrastructure breaks down? So the story here that came out, stock markets plunge. Down in the story said $1 trillion was gone, right? But they changed the headline to reflect that. And remember, January the 25th of this year, when this story first broke, what happened? £500 billion, which is close to $750 billion, was gobbled off the stock market. So since this started, about $3 trillion has been lost at the stock market. And just in 2 days, over $1 trillion. Now, because it's showing up in country after country, that's just going to expand. But because this is happening, the stock market, who has their, how should I put it, I suppose, have incredible influence with media. The media is going to come out and try to downplay it. So they'll kill you to get their money back, basically. European markets suffered sharp drops. That's a polite way of putting it. To them, but their reaction was catastrophic, right? Coronavirus hit global markets, 50 billion off the assets as disease spreads, as a bioweapon gets loose into the population worldwide. This is the biggest crisis the Communist Party in China has faced in 70 years. And so burning bodies, whether alive, that's bad. Burning bodies, people, whether alive, bad. That's crazy. Shame on you. And when they first pick them up, they're treating them like that. So it's not a big stretch to see them so disenfranchised from reality with so many bodies, because they're not telling you the truth, okay? Let's face it. Let's not pretend anymore. More than 62 billion wiped off. Another stock market. People running away from the virus. Yeah. Stock markets, I won't go into that tonight, but they're not supposed to exist. That's weaponized against you. And the best way to look at it is, say, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. Most people are familiar with that name and that company, right? Well, when Mark Zuckerberg went and put his company in the stock market, he can no longer be held accountable. There's no one to hold accountable, see? So if the stock market, you can't hold that company, all you can do is give them a fine, but there's no criminal record. There's no incentive not to be evil. And under the Bill of Rights in Canada, the Magna Carta in the UK, and the Constitution in America, it's illegal, right, to have corporate personhood where you give corporations so many human rights. And this is, but they can't go to jail, they can't be held accountable. They're above the law. All they can do is get a fine, and they put all their taxes in offshore accounts on top of that. So when they get a fine, they're just kicking back the taxes they should have paid originally. And that's just a fraction of a percent of the taxes they didn't pay on top of that for the fines, right? Global traders react with fear to the traders didn't react to it, the victims did. Coronavirus plunge wipes more than 230 billion from the big stocks. Now this is super important. And the big stocks like Apple and Facebook and Amazon and Bill Gates, Microsoft, and Google's parent Alphabet. 200. And so then let's reflect back to when the World Health Organization first showed up. What did they do? They held a meeting at those same companies and called everybody talking about it a troll and said Google, Facebook, and everybody had to censor them, right? That's fact. That's what the World Health Organization, and they're going to have those meetings every 2 weeks. So there's a big incentive for money here for this to happen, is what I'm saying to you. And so I'm aware in the context of why ain't we hearing from all kinds of reports? So what I do is really unusual. And so they're going to censor me. And we know China's got hundreds of thousands of what they call internet trolls, internet army, they call it, for everywhere else, because they have the great firewall of China, right, to keep citizens in what they call, can't call it in check, but to silence their citizens. So this was a couple of weeks ago, the World Health Organization holding meetings with the same companies that are losing incredible amounts of money, and downplayed it and artificially inflated the stocks, which we covered. And because there's so much coming into you, it's easy to forget this happened. So I had a little reminder for everybody that that's actually what's going on. The World Health Organization has done nothing, only helped the big corporations regain their stocks by trying to downplay it. And they've done that by saying that a sneeze only travels 6 feet and only lasts for 30 minutes to several hours on a surface, but studies shows it lasts 9 hours on surfaces, and sneezes, we know, travel 200 feet. So why would the World Health Organization lie to us? Because there's a lot of money in it. And therefore, they should be disbanded and criminally charged for what they're doing. This is criminal, what they've done. Wall Street plunges on fears of coronavirus pandemic. And a pandemic is... And so, when you see all these countries outside of China locking people in their homes, that's a pandemic. Right? That has all... And so, they're not going to do the word pandemic because they're trying to get you to buy stocks again for a few more days or weeks. They're insane. What they're doing is insane. The people that are allegedly in charge have absolutely no intentions of trying to do anything, only help the stock companies. And that's evident in the endless documentation that we've covered here. 44% of the market capitalization of all global equities lost $927 billion of its value on Monday alone. And it crashed again today, right? Tuesday. Indian markets tumble. We got all kinds of stuff. New Zealand has tumbled. UK has tumbled their stock markets. And then the world is approaching a coronavirus tipping point, useful idiots say. Well, that tipping point happened when China locked down 760 million people indefinitely. And it certainly happened when they locked down Wuhan and that province, which was 60 million plus people. Right? Am I right? Am I right or what? Experts who warn that the disease is outpacing efforts to contain it. Well, the effort to contain it is to censor me and you. That's the effort. After major outbreaks, because there's 5 million people got out of Wuhan originally. You can go back through my videos, you'll see headlines about that and all the documentation for it. And I provide the documentations for my assertions, right? Italy and Iran to introduce stringent internal travel restrictions, and South Korea's president placed the country on red alert. Actually, it's on super duper red alert now today. The tipping point after which our ability to prevent the global pandemic ends seems a lot closer after the last 24 hours. But when they locked down 760 million people, you lost the ball right there. You were admitting that you lost. When you lock down 1/10 of the planet, which is what we're talking about, you have lost control 100%. Because they need food, they need to get out, they can't lock people up indefinitely, which is what they're doing. Announcing decisions to raise South Korea's alert levels on Sunday, Moon said the government and the local authorities should not hesitate to take unprecedented, powerful measures to contain the viral disease without being limited by regulation. In other words, martial law is enacted for the flu. That they keep telling you don't worry about it and keep telling you that there's going to be a pandemic. They can't make up their mind. Everybody that's allegedly in charge is schizophrenics. And then the police are running around just doing what they're told. Not being police. We didn't hire police to be useful idiots, monsters. We hired them to stop monsters from existing. They're too busy giving you tickets for seatbelts and jaywalking. He ceased being police about 70 years ago. Announcing his decision to raise South Korea's alert levels on Sunday, the government and local authorities, somebody you hired to do a specific function. They're not authorities. They're just anybody could do their job. You gave them the job and they never asked them to become a monster the day they got the job. Shouldn't hesitate to take unprecedented, powerful, and without being limited by regulations. So they're gone rogue on you. Giorgio Armani cancels the fashion show. Some of the fashion shows are canceled altogether. Most of them got no audience. China's Tokyo run-up stalled by coronavirus outbreak. This is talking about the Olympics. Somehow the Olympics now, they'll kill the whole planet just to have the Olympics. They're willing to infect the entire planet rather than give up the Olympics. It shows you Japan is incompetent and incapable of performing their functions, is what it shows you. You won't even, and they admit they have no backup plan. They're only doing it to cover up the nuclear meltdowns. This gets out of hand. We can see multiple nuclear reactors with not enough people on site with another meltdown happening and no way for people to know what's happening. Right now, Japan is poisoning the entire planet with radiation and radioactive food. They're completely out of control. And so they'll have the Olympics if you don't, and there's no one to speak out. No one's speaking out against them. Like what I'm doing seems to be criminal. How dare you talk about this, Dana? Korea businesses are acting fast to stop the coronavirus spreading. So Korea businesses, these are really weird connotations. As the number of cases soared above 800, 7 people dead, the biggest and best-known South Korea firms acted swiftly to make sure that their legions of workers avoided the illness for which there is so far no sure cure. So what they do is they keep you alive on life support and hope that your immune system beats it. That's how people are surviving it on their own, but they need life support. And then we got headlines now with 3,000 doctors infected, and 1,600 of them are in critical condition, aka life support. China's got a firewall that is meant to. So China, 200,000 flights cancelled, and 200,000 flights times 150 people a flight. There's a lot of people. Chinese airlines scrapped 60% of the scheduled flights. Numerous international carriers suspended most flights in and out of China. Wuhan, the whole epicenter now is China, not Wuhan. Is hardest hit with 94% of flights cancelled, which is an incredible number because there's 60 million people in that one province. Death toll from coronavirus in Iran rises to 12, but there's also headlines, I don't know if it's true or not, saying there's 50. We expect discrepancies like this, right? Because there's a lot of repressive countries like China and Iran. Spread 3 weeks ago, and officials, blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot of propaganda in the stories, is what I noticed, going back several years. And so it's almost like this story is being used to vilify the country. Now, if you know anything about Iran, it's mostly that they're terrorists and whatever. But they got 50 installations, American installations, bases, military bases, with nuclear weapons and biological weapons surrounding the country. That country has been under siege just as bad as North Korea for decades. So they're going to war, but it's just an information war and electronic war. Countries have a right to live their lives the way their country is used to it. So the coronavirus 19 has spread 3 weeks ago, and officials, blah, blah, blah. Brutal blow to the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak after weeks in lockdown. It's over a month in a lockdown, not weeks, that they're going to keep them there indefinitely. So when they say 11 million people, they actually mean 6 million. Because 5 million got out right before they put up the quarantine. That was on purpose, because it's a communist, it's a one-party country, right? And therefore, they got all their friends and loved ones and cronies out of the area before they locked it down. Because once you got locked down, then you were stuck there. It was outrageous. And they knew this was deadly before they done the lockdown. They let the people, their friends and relatives out first. They claimed they would let the healthy people leave for crucial operations, but then they revoked that decision right away. Sharp rises, new cases. And so China has been artificially deflating the numbers in an attempt to get the stocks to go back up. It shows you how dangerous that whole setup is. They're willing to sacrifice the whole planet to artificially inflate the stocks. If we cannot block the spread, by the way, China has dumped almost $1 trillion US into this in the last few weeks, right? That's $4 trillion. Not counting what every other country is burning, trying to deal with it. If we cannot block the spread in South Korea in an effective way, high possibilities will lead to a nationwide transmission. Yeah, so that wasn't China. That was partly China and South Korea, right? Tyrannies fueling the coronavirus pandemic. Right, and we just talked about that for the last while, right? Temperatures screening for passengers in Italy, Sicily airport is you're only getting 2% of the infected when you're doing the thermometer, the digital thermometer. That's only finding late stages. This is latent for up to 4 weeks where you're shedding the weaponized virus into your surroundings. Passengers on Air Canada flight test positive. A couple of weeks ago, right now the test finally come out. So that airplane was in use constantly. They're not dropping the ball, they're throwing it over the cliff. Dr. Frank Esper, this is yesterday, February the 24th, on Major News, saying that it doesn't travel anywhere, it's not airborne, and that it only lasts for about 30 minutes on surfaces. Intentionally downplaying it again. That's just endless stream of these people. Yeah, but he's a doctor, Dana. Yeah, but we got the studies. I can show you about 40 headlines, if I felt like it right now, that I got put aside, of doctors that raped and sodomized and embezzled and murdered people, okay? Not all doctors are good people just because they got a degree. The same way in every discipline. But he's actually, you can go watch the video, you can see it right there. You can see where he's talking about. It's shocking, really, that he done that, and that the media, this Christian media, and this useful idiot, whatever, I can't remember her name, it'll probably show up here in a second. She had done the same thing. Senior medical reporter also given, and she called Wuhan, the capital of the province, saying it had 60 million people in the capital. But that's the entire province. Wuhan regular population was around 11 million, but 5 million got out. Navy's 7th Fleet to screen all personnel boarding ships. So if it gets loose on a military ship, where everybody's in real close quarters, and then they go on leave or come into your country and go ashore, there's just endless ways for this to go south, and that seems to be the only direction it's headed, and south being bad. World Health Organization, who's done nothing, only regurgitated the news without no analyst. They just said, well, South Korea said this, and America said that, and that's their brief every day. They're just consultants. So, I'm doing a way better job than the entire World Health Organization. It's not an organization. As I showed you earlier, they were used to artificially inflate stocks. And we've covered it with the documentation. This is not an opinion, and it's not a conjecture. This is factual. New cases in Iran. Now, Iran has locked down 14, well, not locked it down, but there's no schools, no universities, no public gathering for almost half the country. And that's a big country. And Italy are deeply concerning. Really? 12 towns locked down is concerning? Try not to play it down now. And then the dummies, the Olympic dummies. Apparently, if you're a sports player, you're better than everybody else on the planet. I disagree with it. Look, no point worrying about it. No point worrying about burning people alive. No point worrying about 760 million people locked in their homes. Yeah, forget about them. I'm sports. I'm into sports. Forget about 2.5 million in South Korea locked down. Forget about Italy with all their communities locked down. Forget about the victims that are dependent upon working their paycheck every week because they're living paycheck to paycheck. Just put them up in the media and somehow pretend that they have some enduring attributes when they simply don't. Katie Mullen should just shut up. Just shut up. because you're pointless anyway. Always the same pictures. Yay, you played a game. Whoopie-doo. You got any idea how many people done the exact same thing worldwide, the same time every day? Like a wartime curfew inside Italy's coronavirus quarantine zone. I say that because the Olympics, they'll kill the planet just to have the Olympics. They'll wreck the whole planet just so they can have the Olympics. And then historically, wherever they had the Olympics, did a police state for billions of dollars to protect the athletes, because somehow or another, every other athlete is worthless, only the Olympic athletes. But what happens is the police state they create for the athletes is left behind permanently in that country. The Olympics is a weapon used to take away your freedoms and your liberties. Like a wartime curfew inside Italy's coronavirus zone. New cases concerning about coronavirus is not a pandemic, but yet they're out there saying, get ready for the pandemic. Because they're desperate for the stocks, for their cronies like Google and Facebook to go back up, right? Yeah, Italy is a war time. The police and the military now are guarding the towns. You can't get in or out. And if you leave your house, you get a big fine. Residents of Italy's coronavirus, which is a weaponized military-industrial complex. So first off, think about this. America's got around 4,000 biolabs. I remember covering that a few years ago. But yet they're not trying to come up with a solution. It's because the biolabs, all they do is weaponize. They don't come up with solutions. They make weapons. And there's been many releases from many biolabs many times, and then this is what we're seeing right now. So this is a story, link is below to the mainstream media, China in Focus, where she's in the back seat. She finally recovered. 64% of the people that are in the hospital in critical care die. His hands and feet were moving when they put him in a body bag. Means, you're still alive, right? And then they covered his head, they tied his hands and his feet, and they put him in the body bags. Obviously, that's somebody in their bed with their cell phone taking that picture. That was the media. You'll find the links below to it. And so, anyways, she's talking about they're taking people, putting them in body bags. Then they put them in a weird box, she said. Well, what the box does is suffocate you. Right? It's a sealed box. So yeah, they know they're going to die. It could be several hours. But they're so infectious, they made a decision just to suffocate them in a box. And that reporter, that story, Tiffany, she covers a lot of facets of this over the last number of days. And she's also talking about they knew about it and refused to acknowledge it publicly. And she shows the documentation because they get their media, so they'll get the same memos everybody else is getting, right? There's 1,000 police infected with the virus. Typically, you never see the police looking like that. In fact, they show you, this is what they show you about the police. Look at this coming up. Let's finish out that first. 1,000 police, 3,000 doctors now confirmed. Numbers are actually around 5,000. And then they show you the internal documents that they get, right? And they translate it. 1,000 police infected with the virus, going around beating everybody up. And so when you get in the vehicle where the police are already infected, when you come out at the station, you're going to be infected. See? Is there any need? Because you won't, even if you're not supposed to be on the street, and so this is their solution if they see you, is to grab you, beat you up. So how can that country ever have a future when people do stuff like that, I wonder? They just literally throw them face first into the vehicles. and now the vehicles are infected, see? So all the other police that get it, use the same vehicle, get infected. And because there's no incentive not to be evil like this, it can only get worse. And the fact that they're treating their own like that means they're not humans. They don't have any of the attributes of a human. And there you see a mother being dragged away with the kid screeching. And this is China in Focus showing you all this, by the way, mainstream media. Thank goodness. Mortality rates among the patients is 61.5% mortality rate. That was a new paper just come out in the Lancet. And there's many other journals besides the Lancet. Elsevier, Springer, and Wiley, the three biggest academic publishers out there, they have something like 28,000 journals between the three of them. And so when you hear the word Lancet, that's just one. 61.5% mortality rates for the critically ill. Right now, there's 1,600 critically ill doctors. Plus everybody else, of course, right? We've seen last week we covered where they sent in 25,000 doctors. Now we know why. New study on the mortality rates among patients. Also, these big petri dishes for the healthcare workers they got in China. They're bringing in a dozen of these ships to house them on. It can only go bad, can't it? And then, well, like, it's unusual to have media show you anything, so that was important. But talking about burning all the bodies, which they do later on in the video, woman says patients are cremated alive. That don't terrify you. What does, I wonder? And then they put them in boxes and leave them there because that's where you suffocate, see? Patients are cremated alive, which is very well what's most likely happen. We know we got so much evidence now and so many different reports on it that every crematorium throughout the Wuhan in particular, but outside of Wuhan also, is burning their capacities, 24-hour capacity with no breaks every day for over a month now. And so we have reports, there's probably about 1.5 million possibility that have already died. That would make sense, right? That would make sense when you see headlines like that, because the workers, which are typically just people like me and you, are put into this situation. We become so desensitized, we become zombies. And these people are incredibly infectious and contagious in their later stages of the illness. And it's horrifying. Every facet of this story, been covering it for many weeks, is horrifying. He's not dead. His hands and feet were still moving when he put him in body bags. He tied up his hands and his feet. You don't do that with dead people. And wrapped him in a black plastic body bag. Then zipped it up. It's crazy. They're afraid the virus inside his body will spread. So cruel, but the thing is, the man is alive. He needs to be saved. No, they gave up, right? They just gave up. They're so overwhelmed with misery, they switched off. And we've seen many examples through that, of that happening throughout history. So that's why I'm saying that. And how can he be saved using what? There's no drugs available, only oxygen. She was in one of the beds. She's one of the few who immune system pulled her through. She said, I saw these cases myself while in the hospital. And that's the narrative you expect from people that are traumatized by it. And when you're in a country like this, you don't make this stuff up and still be lucid like that, right? Strikes fear into my heart. And that's what you expect the victims to actually say. These are all appropriate responses. Wanted to cry. It's terrifying. Well, I'm sure she did, right? She wanted to cry right then, is what she's saying. This is what you would expect from somebody who went through that experience and is talking about it. Now, that was a dash cam, see? She most likely had no concept she was on the dash cam. Do you get it? So it's incredibly important, stories like that, because we see the censorship is just dramatic right across the board. And then they're going to put the medics on these dozens of cruise ships that they got ordered in, big petri dishes, and they're only wearing paper suits, right? And it's impossible for them not to get infected. And we see them alluding to huge numbers of infected healthcare workers, and they become so disenfranchised that washing their hands and everything else, they see so many of their comrades go down, they give up hope and become complacent. That's all you got to do with this stuff, is become complacent. And now look at them spraying the parliament steps in South Korea with big hoses of disinfectant. We covered a story the last presentation, over 100 animals, 17 different species dying in one spot. That's right, there's mobile crematoriums. I've heard that around, don't quote me, I think it's around 40 mobile crematoriums. I can't remember the exact number. I do believe it's 20 or 40. It seems more likely it's 40. Let's just say 20. It's definitely at least 20 that we know about. So yes, I did see that. Hi, everybody. Let's keep going here. Cases are on the rise in South Korea. You can see them spraying this incredible. Stock markets are crashing and burning. The yellow jackets, they're going around disinfecting the entire country after country. And a death. So, like, World Health Organization telling you only lasts 30 seconds on, or 30 minutes to 3 hours on surfaces. And lots of doctors doing it, repeating that. You got them saying that it's not airborne. But every facet of this story is clearly showing that it's airborne. And you don't do stuff like this unless it's airborne, unless it's living for extreme periods of times on surfaces. The only reason you would do something like that. See? So it's so much. Now they're going around in food distribution places spraying the same stuff that was killing animals. That's as desperate as it gets. And pretending that they got it under control is ludicrous. They're jeopardizing everybody. And the second they tell us the truth, because they waited so long, they lied so much, so they're in a quandrum where if they tell us the truth, we're going to turn on them. If they don't tell us the truth, we're going to turn on them. And if they don't tell us the truth, we're going to lose a large part of the planet, because this is a weaponized virus, and the attributes associated with it shows it's able to sustain itself and grow on its own. This is why they're spraying the country the way they are. Newborn baby in China recovers from disease without medication. So this is like, what? Somebody recovered without medication. So this is not like a flu or influenza. They're shocked. This made a headline. Holy shit, somebody recovered without medication. Wow. Do you get it? That's what's going on. Right? That's why that headline exists. Newborn baby in China reportedly recovered from coronavirus. It's amazing. Never seen nothing like it. So turn into a headline. See? 17-day-old child managed to survive without getting medication. You know why they got no medication? Because there ain't none. 188 Indonesians from the World Dream Cruise, which was the ship tried to dock in Hong Kong, are going to be put on an uninhabited island. So when was the last time we heard tell of people with the flu being quarantined on, Christmas Island in Australia, But that was habited. This is not. And there's India done the same thing, right? We covered all, because we've covered so many headlines. It's absurd, really. It's absurd how many headlines I've covered in the last 4 weeks or so. It really is. And it's amazing how many I didn't cover because it was just not, and I should have, and I gathered it up, but you can only cover so much in one of these presentations, right? It's just an absurd amount of information that I brought to the table. It's going to evacuate the 188 people and put them on an island. That's crazy. 7 countries now restricted entries from Japan. So Japan is looking infectious to many countries, right? The Japanese nationals, those traveling from Japan in an effort to prevent the spread of the virus. So they're considering Japan as a bad country to let into your country because of the virus. Therefore, you can kiss the Olympics goodbye if you're foolish enough to be still hanging on to that fantasy. So then you got government claiming they're still not sure that it's not a biochemical weapon. Well, just because it's not from Wuhan, and it could be, because Wuhan has one of those facilities, it could be anywhere. There's a lot of indications suggesting that it accidentally got out of their lab. And we know that there's people working at these labs have made $1 million and got arrested for doing it, of taking the animals they're using their bioweapons on and then selling them in the local markets. Like the absolutely most demonic thing you could do. So if you're a doctor or scientist working and you're selling the animals, you're as disconnected from reality as it gets. You're one of the most dangerous things on the planet, and you have so much contempt for life that you would do something like that. It's not a far stretch to imagine that this got loose. What would it cost to cancel the Tokyo Olympics? Well, let me see. Stock markets lost $1 trillion on Monday. Won't be anywhere near that. Australia cleaners. So here's again, we see Japan trying to get foreign people to go work in adverse conditions. Right? Because right now, the nuclear meltdowns in Japan, they're using the homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language. Oh, and they're also using temporary workers from different countries. Right? I covered that extensively last year. And there was a lot of documentation came out that they were trying to bring in millions of people. And oh, by the way, they can also work at Fukushima. Why not bring in nuclear academics and nuclear students to work at a nuclear meltdown? I know that sounds crazy, but just saying. I think it's a good idea. But anyway, Japan is trying to, the Diamond Princess cruise ship, you want to bring in people from Australia to clean the ship because Japan left everybody on the ship rather than let them come ashore. In fact, Japan originally had ordered in ferries. They were going to keep people coming into their country in quarantine on the ships. And there's a lot of countries that done similar stuff where they wanted to isolate them in weird places, right? All of this, and then the media has censored everybody. The media being social networking sites, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Google, which owns YouTube, and many other platforms. We even know that text messaging is being censored on this subject. All you need is a valid passport to go to Japan and clean for 6 days. Double pay. You get full protective gear. Well, why not just hire Japanese? No shaking hands at a London conference. One of the weirdest, most bizarre, strangest stories imaginable. 2 weeks ago, somebody was there who had the illness, and now they don't want anybody shaking hands. Attendees of a conference in central London told not to shake hands after a British person with the coronavirus attended an event at the same venue a couple of weeks ago. No shaking hands for you. So therefore, the World Health Organization was telling us, oh, it only lives on surfaces for 30 minutes to 3 hours, still doing it, because doctors are still out there repeating it, regurgitating that. And we got studies a long time ago, several weeks ago, saying it lasts 9 days. They won't repeat that. And they're claiming the sneeze only travels 6 feet when everybody knows it travels 200 feet. Now we got the Canary Islands. You got a guest there, a single person that might have it, the coronavirus biological weapon virus. And they got 1,000 people in the hotel are locked in their rooms. I'm at this every day, but it still shocks the living daylights out of me. It still blows me away that is the solution. The solution, what? There's somebody with the flu in my country. Everybody get in your house and don't come out again. And you're going to keep calling this the flu. You're not, the media, everybody should definitely abandon worldwide media if we make it through this. Because when is lying to you every day, all day, acceptable? At what point is that not acceptable, I wonder? Because I crossed the line over a decade ago where I started doing stuff like this. Police surrounded the 4-star hotel to make sure no one enters or leaves. Gee, Dana, there's someone there got the flu. Yeah, I know. Let's be realistic. They're infected with bioweapons. And then bioweapons going to get a black eye, which you should have got 50 years ago for doing stuff like this in the first place. But this is the hotel. People can't get in or out. Everybody's standing around. You got people on the balcony. The Twilight Zone. You can't touch this stuff. China's banks and insurers injected 112 more billion to help fight coronavirus. To fight the coronavirus. They spent 43 billion, or they injected 43 billion a week and a half ago, 8 days ago or something. And there was 170 billion into the companies to help them because they had to close down. Blah, 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 blah. But 43 billion was just to spray the country. 43 billion to spray the country. To help coronavirus-related efforts. The Dow futures harder after Monday $1 trillion wipeout. They're not even supposed to exist. 3,000 infected doctors, 1,600 in serious condition. And so anybody in serious condition, you got a 61.5% survival rate according to a new study, right? But because there's so much confusion, they regurgitate a lot of the old news also. 10 schools sent pupils home because people came back from Italy in UK. UK has got to be the strangest one. Every story from UK is like Twilight Zone. Gathering in large numbers could be banned in Scotland. This is over and over and over. It's really... And all you do is lie to you and tell you to shut up. Liverpool fans in coronavirus quarantine. So people that went to soccer games now are enemy number one. That's something. Well, remind anybody, if you got banned here, I don't know, I can't just find you in thin air. And I ban people because I don't have time to fight with them or argue with them. Or they cross the line. Now, I've been under siege for many years by the internet trolls, the industry trolls, right? And so there are innocent people that end up in that pile, or there's people that are just confused, and I just can't argue or fight with everybody. And so my apologies if you're a good person, but I'm not gonna get it right every time, right? I'm human too. Liverpool fans in coronavirus quarantine following a trip. And so everybody now, they're closing all the sporting events in the major countries. This got nothing to do with the flu. This is a bioweapon, right? Well, that's another update for everybody. And you got to realize, it might not seem like a lot of, it's an absurd amount of work to gather up all this information. It's absurd. You got to find it, screen capture it, transfer it into the operating system, into the TriCaster. Then you got to get ready for the broadcast. But just finding all these stories, every one of these stories, when I find them, are less than 1 hour old. And so I'm always forever glued to this, to the search, looking for the information, because that's what I do anyway, right? And when this story broke, we had to cover this because this was looking really scary, and then it turned out to be really scary, and in a bad way. So we're seeing, originally we were calling it, why is there such a disproportionate response to the flu? Now we're saying, well, you know, this is the new norm, but how long can we lock people up in their homes? They're dependent upon going to work every day, living check to check. And when you lock them up like they're doing, once you get locked in your homes, we've never seen any country switch it off. You stay in your home. How is that tenable? And then the people that are authorities or government employees, they're incompetent and incapable of taking care of everybody locked, millions of people locked in their homes. And they won't tell the truth. And so the law gets bigger and more dangerous every single day, is all I can tell you. There you go. So that's the show. God bless everybody. Thank you, everybody. I can't possibly reply to everybody in the comment sections or anything. I'll get in there and read them later tonight and tomorrow. And we appreciate everybody finding the time to hear out and see through this documentation. Right now, from what I can tell, is I'm bringing you the most honest documentation available on the internet. I'm gathering it all up, and we're sharing it in these platforms. I'm censored heavily. So if people don't share me, then people won't be able to find this information, right? So I'm on YouTube. You can put me in your bookmarks so you can find me later, or you can subscribe if you got a YouTube channel. I'd rather you put me in your bookmarks so you can definitely find me whenever you feel like it. Because they do subscribe people to me. I am heavily censored. I do have 6 current gag orders from the Canadian government about nuclear. And then you can share me on Twitter. One of the easiest things you can do for me is give me a good old-fashioned like. I had that on replay. Sorry. And I go through an incredible amount of effort to bring you these presentations. There's a lot of ways you can get this information out there. Okay, there's endless ways you can get this information out there. If you don't share me, they got me censored. There's no maybe about this. There's no maybes about this. So let's go rogue on them and help me get this information out there. You can re-upload these videos. You don't have to link to me. You don't have to put my name in the title. You don't have to mention me. Put up a different name and just a different headline and sneak this information out there is the best thing you can do as far as I can tell. But as long as you share the information, the world will be a better place because the truth will set you free, and we bring you an awful lot of the truth. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. And we'll see everybody, I don't know, should I do a presentation every day or every second day? I don't know. Give us a thumbs up if you can. If not, don't worry about it. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody soon. Take care now.